Prema. Sure, that's okay, Didi. Can we leave the door a little open?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
some light.
Yeah, and some air.
More lightness.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that okay if we turn off that one? Yeah, very, very beautiful. Krishna Prem, and the Bengali, it's like very, very colloquial Bengali. Very, very simple, straightforward, everyday Bengali. Jadi, Krishna Prem Jadi. If you would like Krishna Prem, if you really want Krishna Prem, then you must always remember all these associates of the Lord. Braje Bash Jadi Cha. If you want to live in Vrindavan. Very beautiful. Okay.
I was just wondering if they were part of the original or not.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too, yeah. I have to ask somebody. Maybe Lalita Madhava. Okay, so I started with the introduction. We have two parallel discussions going on. The Chaitanya Bhagavat discussion. So let me see where we are. We're reading from it was very nice, Srila Swami Maharaj, he gives this kind of more ontological definition of what Chaitanya Charitamrita means. So we were discussing that in the last meeting. And let's see where we are. We talked about the plurality of Guru, right? This is the beginning. Vande Gurun is the first phrase of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think that was where we left off. So, after offering Omajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Anmilitanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. After offering obeisances to the disciplic succession, the author pays obeisances to all other devotees, to the Lord Himself, to His incarnations, to the expansions of Godhead, and to the manifestation of Krishna's internal energy. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sometimes called Krishna Chaitanya, is the embodiment of all these. He is God, Guru, devotee, incarnation, internal energy, and expansion of God. So simply we understand this in terms of Achincha Beda Bed, right? This is the nature of the total reality. Everything is inconceivably one with and different from the Lord. As his associate Nityananda, he is the first expansion of God. As Advaita, he is an incarnation. As Gadadhar, he is the internal potency. And as Srivas, he is the marginal living entity in the role of a devotee. Thus, Krishna should not be thought of as being alone, but should be considered as eternally existing with all his manifestations, as described by Ramanujacharya. So, the Lord is not, this is, it's very simply and sweetly put. Krishna's never alone. He never goes anywhere alone. He's always got his entourage with him. Whenever he descends to this world, he brings everyone with him too. It's always a very inclusive arrangement. And so as we were just singing, what were you singing, Vishnupriya? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kodi. That Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya, in order to give his mercy to the souls of this world, Swaparshada, Swiya Dhamma, Saha Avatadi. Saha means with. Avatadi is descending. Then with who and what is he descending? His Parshad and his Dham. Right? So he brings the whole package with him, when he descends. And that also, as we were discussing in the last meeting, it also indicates, that if we want to really be a part of this, we have to be ready to enter a refined, sophisticated conception of the nature of God and our relationship with Him. Means it's not just going to be me and Him, but we're entering like a system here. There's a whole system that's surrounding the Lord. and involves, refined levels, nuanced appreciation for all of the persons surrounding the Lord. In the Vishishta Dvaita philosophy, which I believe is Ramanuja's philosophy, I think that's being indicated. Because remember, there are 4 principal Vaishnava sampradayas, and they all have they're all a little different, right? We all agree on the main points, right? But there are a few points of, differentiation. So, some of them will emphasize Vishnu a little bit more than Krishna. Others will emphasize because this is going back to this achincha, bade, abade, bade, difference, abade, non-difference. This is our relationship with the Lord. So some will emphasize more the oneness with the Lord, and others will emphasize more the difference with the Lord. Like Madhvacharya, right? Madhva who went, sometimes you'll see paintings of Madhvacharya where he has his fingers like this, because he would emphasize the dual nature of the relationship. Which, is kind of needed if we think in the context of India being swallowed up by the Tamingala fish of Mayavad, right? The conception of oneness has been way overemphasized, so Madhvacharya is kind of, dealing with that. So Vishishta Dvaita means, sometimes it's translated as qualified oneness. Like oneness with also some distinction there. In the Vishishta Dvaita philosophy, God's energies, expansions, and incarnations are considered to be oneness in diversity. Oneness in diversity. So both sides are there. In other words, God is not separate from all of these. Everything together is God. Actually, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is not intended for the novice, for it is the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. Ideally, one begins with the Bhagavad Gita and advances through Srimad Bhagavatam to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Although all these great scriptures are in the same absolute level, for the sake of comparative study, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is considered to be on the highest platform. Every verse in it is perfectly composed. Sometimes I think of Chaitanya Charitamrita as I think of Srimad Bhagavatam as la crème de la crème. It is the cream of the cream, right? We think of all the Vedic scriptures like as an ocean of milk, and then Bhagavatam is like the cream of that, But are we going to say cream or cream of the cream? I have to think about this analogy. Well, if we think of okay, well, let's just say Bhagavatam, cream of the cream. Then Chaitanya Charitamrita is cream of the cream of the cream. No. It's more distilled, more essential, even more pure. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj made that famous, well-known statement, right? That the greatest theological scripture that's ever seen the light of day. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the second verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the author offers his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. He compares them to the sun and the moon because they dissipate the darkness of the material world. In this instance, the sun and the moon have risen together. In the Western world, where the glories of Lord Chaitanya are relatively unknown, one may inquire, who is Krishna Chaitanya? The author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, answers that question in the third verse of his book. Generally, in the Upanishads, the supreme absolute truth is described in an impersonal way, But the personal aspect of the Absolute Truth is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, where we find the following verse. Hiranmayena pate. So in many places in the scriptures, they're kind of hinting towards the this personal nature of the Lord. But it is a hint. It's not clear. It's not direct. So this is what is so special about Srimad Bhagavatam, because the personality of divinity is described with a strong philosophical ontological basis. Whereas in many other places, like in the Puranas, it's mostly just telling Leela, which for some people translates as nice stories, right? So without that, like the that strong philosophical foundation, then it's easy for scholars to dismiss, right? Don't take it so seriously. But in Bhagavatam, that is given. The Leela is given, the ontology is given, the philosophy is given. So Bhagavatam is in a special class, and it's very important scripture for us. But then in the Upanishads, there are hints, right? It's all a little hazy, And one with the eye to see, they can understand what's being said, but it is not clear, So here is one such verse from the Ishopanishad. Hiranmayena patena satyasya pihitam mukam tatvam pushan apavrinu satya dharmaya drishtaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. And there's also this Jyotir Abhyantare Rupam Atulam Shama Sundaram. This is another line, maybe another Upanishad, but Gurudev liked to quote this line. Do you remember hearing Gurudev? The Jyotir Abhyantare Rupam Atulam Shama Sundaram. Maybe you heard. Saying that beyond that great light, there's that beautiful dark Lord. The Jyoti light, right? Jyoti Abhyantare, beyond that. Beyond, if you get past that white light, you'll find that dark Lord, Shri Krishna. Incomparably Atulam Shama Sundar. Shama is like the dark, right? Shama Suntulam Shama Sundaram. So don't get stuck on the effulgence. Don't get bedazzled by that effulgence. Go beyond that and you'll find that sweet, loving, personal Lord. Please reveal that to me. Don't let me be fooled. In Brahma Samhita, there's this really nice line in one of the purports of Bhakti. I think it's one of the purports of Bhakti Thakur, and he kind of like describes the nature of the reality, kind of like as an obstacle course, like before you get to Goloka, and he mentions foolish people go to Vaikuntha and like things like that, and even more foolish people they get distracted by dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It's very funny. There's this kind of like transcendental snobbery that you come across sometimes, which we are not eligible to express at all by a very long shot, but we can appreciate seeing that sentiment in our gurus sometimes. Like there's also that line paravome de fele, that if you get bedazzled by the Aishwarya, by the grandeur, the majesty of Vaikuntha, you'll be bedazzled. If you're bedazzled by that type of worship, then you'll be hurled down. You'll be thrown down to Vaikuntha. Like it's the greatest punishment ever. You have to live in Vaikuntha. The impersonalists do not. So we don't know anything. We're just like holding on to our Gurudev's, cloth, like just trying to keep, follow him. Wherever you take us, Gurudev, that's good, We're not so refined, so advanced to make these, informed decisions. We're just ignorant children. The impersonalists do not have the power to go beyond the effulgence of God and arrive at the personality of Godhead from whom this effulgence is emanating. So I recently discovered that people generally don't know what effulgence means. Did you know that? And then when I was in America, I was mentioning it, and like nobody in the room knew. This was in the temple. Oh, they said they knew, but they said in the world people don't know. And there was one visitor, and he didn't. He was educated, doctor. He didn't know the word. So anyway, I have to explain effulgence. The halo, the lights, yeah. So this is quite an interesting, I like the way Srila Swami Maharaj says this here, that the impersonalists do not have the power. It takes some spiritual power, to go beyond the light, the effulgence of God, and arrive at the personality of Godhead from whom this effulgence is emanating. Gurudev would sometimes compare devotion to a type of like rocket, right? He would use that analogy sometimes. So it's like that, and you compare faith to the launching pad. So we need a very good launching pad, and we need a very good rocket, to be able to go through all these different layers of existence. And that is the spirit of dedication. That is the spirit of service. Sevan muke hi jivata. That is what gives us the power. That's what gives us the ticket. That's like the fuel. Otherwise we won't have enough. Our rocket won't have enough power to get through the Brahmajyoti. To pierce through that plane. Or that analogy, Mahaprabhu's analogy is, Gurudev's giving like a modern analogy, but Mahaprabhu's analogy 500 years ago is the creeper of devotion, right? The Bhakti Lata. Because the word is actually used like piercing, that the Bhakti Lata beads will pierce through all the different layers of the material and spiritual sky. And so it needs some power, right? It needs some force to be able to do that. And that force is the spirit of dedication. Because every zone has some particular... Gurudev would use, which I really appreciate so much. Gurudev would speak of this in terms of gravitational fields. Like every plane has a particular gravitational field which has its attracting potency, right? So because we're of a particular consciousness now and a particular level of dedication and exploitation, we're at a particular ratio, let's say, of these things, then we are attracted. We come under the influence of the gravitational plane of this world. But if we, and the spirit of exploitation is also like a kind of weight, right? Dedication gives you that lightness to go higher plane. So the spirit of exploitation, it holds you down and it brings you in contact with a corresponding gravitational field, right? So Bur, that is this plane. The plane of Bur, Bhuvar, Swa, Maha, Jana, right? These different planes in the material zone are described. So this is described as the plane of gross physical experience, sensory experience. So the weight of our consciousness has brought us to this plane. But as we evolve, through the spirit of dedication, we will get past through all these planes in the material zone and the spiritual zone also. So, much fuel is required in our rocket, Much power is required that will allow us to go through. Let's see where we are. The Ishopanishad is a hymn to that personality of Godhead. It is not that the impersonal Brahman is denied. It is also described, but that Brahman is revealed to be the glaring effulgence of the body of Lord Krishna. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we learn that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. In other words, Sri Krishna Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. The Paramatma or Super Soul, who is present within the heart of every living entity and within every atom of the universe, is but the partial representations of Lord Chaitanya. Partial representation of Lord Chaitanya. This discussion actually reminds me of Srila Swami Maharaj's book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, right? I've never read that book. I'm sure you all have. But it feels related to this discussion, right? How can you cross to different planets, different gravitational fields? And you must have read that book, Prabhu, right?
Ages ago.
Okay, long time ago. Yeah, it's a very catchy title, isn't it?
Yeah, it was made for the hippies of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
To entice them to open the book,
Right.
read it.
Right. But I expect he's talking about how you can reach Goloka Vrindavan. Something like that.
Yeah. It's about transformation of consciousness.
Uh-huh.
So that after you die, then your consciousness will go upwards rather than down.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather than staying on the same plane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's Prabhupada's no-nonsense philosophy with a
catchy title. Right. An enticing title. That's pretty clever. That's a good way of putting it. Prabhupada's no-nonsense philosophy. Gurudev spoke about that too. He was surprised sometimes, like how direct Srila Prabhupada could be, Sometimes even like if I'm reading some purpose, I'll like skip over some parts, because it's like too much. If I'm reading like to a group, and then I'll skip over some parts. It's like too no nonsense, too strong.
That's another time also.
Yeah, and I mean, I know several persons who they were kind of turned away, their faith was not strong enough, and they couldn't digest it, they can't accept, But then, of course, those of strong faith, they will celebrate, such statements. It is not that the impersonal Brahman is denied, it is also described, but that Brahman is revealed to be the glaring effulgence, light of the body of Lord Krishna. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we learn that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. Maybe it's only in America they don't know the word effulgence. Maybe it's more of a British word. I don't know.
Love, peace, and light.
Therefore, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, being the basis of both Brahman and the all-pervading Paramatma as well, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As such, he is full in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. In short, we should know that he is Krishna, God, and that nothing is equal to or greater than him. There is nothing superior to be conceived. He is the Supreme Person. Srila Rupa Goswami. So, this is part of the system of, part of Kaviraj's system of presentation. That, in order, because this is about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? And he wants to establish Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord. But in order to do that, he also first has to establish Krishna as the Supreme Lord, right? So this is kind of Swami Maharaj is explaining this in a summary way, and then we'll see that this elaborated on in the beginning chapters of Chaitanya Charitamrita. That first he goes to some trouble to give evidence that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and then at the end of that he directly states the reason I'm doing this, is only to demonstrate the supreme position of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's like building something up here, and then he's elaborating on Mahaprabhu's position as supreme. In short, we should know that he is No, I read that. Srila Rupa Goswami, a confidential devotee, taught for more than 10 days continually by Lord Chaitanya, wrote, Namo Mahavadanyaya, everybody knows this verse, Namo Mahavadanyaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya, Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more magnanimous than any other avatar, even Krishna himself, because he is bestowing freely what no one else has ever given, pure love of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya's teachings begin from the point of surrender to Krishna. He does not pursue the paths of karma yoga or jnana yoga or hatha yoga, but begins at the end of material existence, at the point where one gives up all material attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins his teachings by distinguishing the soul from matter. And in the 18th chapter, he concludes at the point where the soul surrenders to him in devotion. So where, in other words, where Bhagavad Gita ends, Chaitanya Charitamrita begins. And we can say that is also true to some extent with Srimad Bhagavatam. There are many points in Bhagavad Gita which are kind of, touched upon. They're giving the beginning of it. But then in Bhagavatam, they are coming out in a more full-fledged way, as Gurudev would say, more developed way. And there are a number of verses where you can make some parallel. Like for example, and I believe I heard this, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he directly made this comparison. Matra Sparshashtu Kunte. We're reading this verse yesterday, in the hospital. Matra Sparshashtu Kunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada Agama Payino Nityas Tam Tidiksha Shabadata. It's a famous verse, right? Everybody knows this verse, right? What is the number? It's chapter 2. It's a good verse to learn. Matra Sparshash. It's saying that, it's speaking about the temporary nature of this plane, that by contact of our senses with the sensory world, we experience pleasure, pain, heat, cold, right? In the summer, hot, in the winter, cold. Then Krishna says, but this is all temporary. Therefore, you must tolerate. You should tolerate these things. So, this world is the world of duality. It is the world of change. And it is the world of, So therefore, you should tolerate it. And it's all superficial. It's all happening on the surface. So don't get so caught up. Today I'm very unhappy. Today I'm happy. Today I'm hot. Now I'm rich. Now I'm poor. Today I have friends. Today nobody likes me. Today I'm very popular. Now I only have 500 followers on Instagram. I have 1,000 followers on Instagram, right? These things are all very superficial. So we should not become so involved with them. We should tolerate what disturbance comes. This is the advice of Gita. And then we can compare that with Bhagavatam, right? Famous verse of Bhagavatam, encouraging tolerance of our situation. You know this verse. You were talking about it yesterday. Yes. The prize goes to Saraswati. Tattenu kampam susamik shamano bunjane vatma pritam vipakam pridvago porpi ridanandamaste jiveta yo mukti pade sa dayabak. Now, why do you think that verse is giving a higher instruction than Bhagavad Gita? Because it's encouraging you to tolerate, but also
to accept.
Well, that's kind of the same thing.
Go deeper in the positive.
It's giving an attitude attached to that tolerance, and it's also saying that will ensure mukti, that will ensure your liberation.
But there's another point here. This word anukampa, tate anukampa.
An attitude that you should have towards that toleration, right?
Okay, what is that attitude?
It's an attitude of gratitude that
Yes.
the environment is doing is tailor-making my education. It's actually an educational process, tailor-made for myself. And that, if I can view it with that perspective, that attitude of gratitude, that will lead to mukti, that will attract the Krishna mukti pade daiva.
Yes, exactly. Not only are we tolerating, but we're seeing this is actually good for me. There's gratitude, as you said. There's the feeling, this is mercy, anukampa. This is the Lord's grace upon me. It's not only like in the sphere of justice, right? I did wrong, and so I'm going to have to, I deserve it. Okay, I'll bear it out. I'll bear it, tolerate it. But the Lord is so loving. He's so merciful. This is coming to help me. This is my friend.
Because otherwise the ego is still there somewhere in the I think Guru Maharaj calls it love and rupture, like we just in the same. And if you still tolerate that with some
Resentment.
no, not resentment, but you say, okay, with some knowledge you tolerate, but there is a deeper thing that you say, actually it is good for me, because I'm what has happened, the negativity that has come in my life is actually good for me, because I am the culprit, I'm the criminal. There's nobody. Ch.Ch. means also everything is good outside. The whole environment is good, but I'm the culprit. I'm seeing with the eyes which are not with love for the Lord, who is teaching me something to get rid of these layers of ego who are always obstructing us with some criticizing, or with some criticizing that what we have to go through for our purification, to go deeper into the heart and soul existence. Is that something?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm quite following you.
Did you follow?
Yeah, I think you were just elaborating on the concept of the sloka, right?
Yes. Like everything is good, whatever happened, very difficult, everything is good, because I have to go deeper. There's some ego still involved in all these layers, and I have to come out with my heart and soul to see everything is the Lord's presentation. Everything is there's some, I have to rectify something in myself.
Yes. But how about this, right? If the environment is good, Guru Maharaj has said the environment is good, don't criticize the environment, right? We are here to modify ourselves based on the environment and not to try to change the environment. But also, what is kirtan? Kirtan is a fight with the Maya environment. How do you reconcile those two concepts?
You see, this is actually a really important discussion, because this is where problems can come, right? If devotees indiscriminately apply Tate Nukampa, there's a whole dialogue about this going on right now in our mission.
The environment has presented me with this huge cake.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'd rather not have it, but...
Exactly. This actually leads to a type of impersonalism. If we indiscriminately apply that verse, right? If somebody comes in front of us and is abusing our guru, then will we say Otate Nukampam, right?
No, that is specifically when the Vaishnava or the guru is treated wrongly, then that is anger. Anger is used in a good way when you come up to protect the prestige of the guru or the Vaishnava.
Yeah, see, you understand, but not everybody. No, not everybody. No. That verse, I've seen it overemphasized You know, that there's this like there's a passivity, a passiveness that whatever comes we will cow down. You know.
No, I think Guru Maharaj explains also, like, if there's a situation, then you talk about it in a nice way, because we always have to be very tolerant and humble, in a nice way. If you cannot change it anymore, then then you accept it as the will of Krishna. And then people go their way, devotees go their way, and you also go your way with your practicing.
Yeah. So the point is that we are trying to follow the Lord's interest. I think this is the point of what is favorable and what is unfavorable, right? What is anukul and what is pratikul. And so in order to follow what is favorable to the Lord's interest, then sometimes we may need to assert something, right? No, this chocolate cake is not good for me right now. If we're taking this example, small example, right? No, that we in order to follow the Lord's cause and His will, then we may need to assert. You know, we may need to impose. There may need to be a fight, as you also said. Kirtan is a fight. That we are resisting the waves of the environment, right? But then another interesting point. Once you reach the Mahabhagavat level, then again there's that. Oh, everything's perfect, right? But in that case, because the Mahabhagavat cannot even preach. The Mahabhagavat sees everyone as perfect, everything's perfect, right? Mm-hmm. But that is when you're deeply situated in the higher plane, in that higher spirit of dedication. So yes, it is. You've brought up an interesting, significant point, you know, because it can be, and I've seen devotees you know, get a little bewildered by that point, you know, because you can become overly passive in the name of following Tat-Te Nukampam. You become overly passive to your environment, you know. So it requires some discrimination and sincerity.
Absolutely,
right,
it needs to be elaborated and explained actually, because if you have, let's say, something that's considered a negative habit perhaps, or some negative condition, that circumstance that you brought upon yourself through incorrect choices of action, then it's incumbent on you to try and change that for your for the better.
Yeah.
So if you were to say, oh, Tat-Te Nukampam Susamikshimano, I'm living in a hovel, I've got no devotee association, I've got bad habits.
Right.
Tat-Te Nukampam
Right.
I'm just going to be sort of happy with this.
Yeah.
No.
Then that is actually one interpretation of Tat-Te Nukampam, but it's a tamasic interpretation.
Yeah.
So
nice.
you can see it, how it can be applied on various levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
You try and take the highest interpretation, where there is a balance between the tamasic resignation of one's, you know, like questionable, undesirable, despicable condition, and then the sattva of, the rajas of trying to change something too much, and then the sattva of a balanced approach, where you change it where it needs to be changed, and accept it with gratitude where that is appropriate. And I think with anything it requires some common sense. It requires some common sense.
And also, like, you have to be sincere. Goswami Maharaj said, you have to have a brutal honesty with your own mind. That is, I mean, our gurus have very fine guidance for us, like, you know, you have to be honest to yourself. And then you can apply Tat-Te Nukampam. And also Gurudev says, Govinda Maharaj, you can say everything to everybody, but it is the way how you say it. Main thing is that the ego doesn't, you know, we feel when the ego comes in, it spoils everything anyway.
How is the verse applied it's given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Tat-Te Nukampam.
Well, it's originally Bhagavatam.
It's originally Bhagavatam and Rama's Lila. But
How is it in? Oh, you
yeah,
mean
how is it
in
given
the
into
Sarvabhauma? And you mean in
it's
the
that, it's in
Sarvabhauma?
there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's because Sarvabhauma, the verse isn't actually really discussed. It's just that Sarvabhauma wants to change the ending of the verse.
Oh, that's right, Bhakti Pade, yeah.
So the verse isn't actually discussed. The Mukti Pade wants to change to Bhakti Pade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a result of his fresh conversion, right?
Yeah, his like new, fired up, you know.
And Mahaprabhu says it's not necessary.
Because mukti ultimately means, you know, sarupena, mukti ranyatadupam, sarupena vivastiti. Real mukti, the highest conception of mukti, is being situated in one's eternal position. So, positive conception of liberation of mukti.
Service situation, yeah.
Well, very nice discussion today.
So nice, so deep, so it's everything in the self, right? Going, refining. Has nothing to do with the environment, really. It's in us.
One last, I interrupted, excuse me. One last point where you said with sincerity, if we try and apply the concepts of the verse with sincerity, then you will be guided.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many verses that say that, you know, that you take a step with sincerity and then the light shines and you can see how to take the next step.
Yeah.
And then, what was I going to say? Yeah, so there will be some kind of revelation in terms of how to apply the verse appropriately.
Right.
And
that's
I think
a nice point.
Yeah.
Guidance, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tama.
Yeah. And I think the key to that is in the verse itself. Hrid Bhag, like Hrid with your heart, there's some gratitude there.
The heart is so good.
Yeah, so if you have that sincerity, that proper attitude, anukampam, then from that subjective condition of gratitude in your heart, then you will know, it will be revealed how you will apply the technical elements of the verse, which is, you know,
That's
specific
beautiful.
to a person's circumstance.
That's the answer. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. All right. Maybe Didi, you want to sing? Sri Hari Vasari. You didn't. We sang.
Rama wants to say something.
Yes,
I just
please.
thought maybe there is some close connection with Trinada Visunichana, because if you're capable of being tolerant, patient, and you go through the circumstances, and the circumstances sometimes can be very difficult and painful, but by understanding that that is arranged for you specifically to become better, then you don't separate the environment. You don't separate things for good and bad, but you accept it as a favorable arrangement for you, in the sense that like there's no enemies, so to say. Like if there's a situation where you suffer and it appears that someone is the cause of your suffering, and you remember that everything in the environment is arranged favorably for you, because it helps you to reflect. And if you can tolerate that first thing, what comes up within, like anger or disappointment, then you reflect and you go through it, and you can improve, and it can actually help you.
And it's also necessary to make your connection, your relationship with Guru and your Lord deeper, stronger, because you feel helpless and you feel alone, you feel frustrated, and you know it's by the will of the Lord. But then by tolerating and by being sincere and knowing that you continue with your service, with your chanting, and it's all for the good. And you get there's the other verse, the two, Tatena Prampam, and the Vidyate, Vidyat Grantis, the knots in the heart. So many knots in the heart who hamper for us to see we are the culprit. We have to see with the eyes of love everything. Our environment, to see our environment with the eyes of love, see the devotees, the people with the eyes of love. I mean, that is, who am I saying that it's difficult, but that is so encouraging.
Jai. We're on page 267. Shri Hari Vasare Hari Kirtana Vinana. Nitya Rangila Prabhu Jagatera Prana. Nitya Rangila Prabhu Jagatera Prana. Anyavanta Shiva Ganesha Radha Harishi Ki Jai, Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Devi Swami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Lakshmi Shri Devi Swami Maharaj Ki Jai, Jai Shri Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Rupanuga Kuvarga Ki Jai, Acharya Shri Haridas Ki Jai, Saprashad Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat West London Chapter Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai, the assembled devotees Ki Jai, the world devotees Ki Jai, Jai Shri Radha Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Shri Ekadashi Ki Jai, Ekadashi Rakta, this is Ekadashi Rakta Palam Kodi Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai, all the devotees following Ekadashi Ki Jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.
Vishakha